Okay, thank you for joining us today. This is our first webinar, or my first webinar with Certification Planner uh, regarding PMI-ACP certification. And I would like to talk about today whether or not this certification is going to be invaluable to you, meaning it's going to be extremely useful, crucial, and maybe vital to your profession, or if you have the impression this is just another impractical certification, that my organization will never respect. And the way I like to do this is, I always like to show, let me back up just a second. So before I begin, just to give you a little background knowledge about CPL, and that is this company has been in business for several years. They've trained over 35,000 professionals. They offer over 200 plus courses, which I gotta say, I've been doing this for a long time. This is pretty remarkable. For example, I co-teach at the University of Georgia here in Atlanta, where I live, which is, I'll be relocating to Florida soon. But anyway, they only offer maybe a half dozen project management courses. Now CPL they're not exclusive to project management. I mean, they dabble in other areas as well, and they provide certifications in, I think, some of the lean methodology and ITIL and that sort of thing. I hate to use acronyms, but it's best I use them for this webinar. All the instructors are certified. 5 accreditations, meaning they've earned 5 status symbols in the industry, and based on their stats, they have a 97.25 success rate. All right, I can't argue with the stats. It is what it is. All right, and then here's just some very brief high-level reviews of their programs based on some of their students, and I have to assume these are recent. And PMP obviously is probably the most popular certification training and then they do have contracts with all these companies that you see here, including Microsoft, which I'm going to reference Microsoft in a little bit later. Brent, some big players here. They're big players, in my opinion, because they're well organized and they become successful. And how did they become successful? Of course, trial and error. But also, I don't see a lot of these companies as being what I would refer to as a one-trick pony. I mean, they have many different tools, many different resources in their back pocket whenever they take on a new project. They're not exclusive to one type of methodology or one type of approach. And that's the beauty of, I think, of the ACP, the PMI-ACP certification, is it is going to expand, especially if those of you have been in the profession for a while and you've been pressurized to take this course or earn the certification. It's going to expand your knowledge, and I think it's going to make you have a serious introspective look back at your methodology and your approach to project management, because this is extremely radical compared to maybe where you've come from on the prescriptive side of things. So as I mentioned earlier, I prefaced this whole webinar today, is it invaluable or is it impractical? Well, is this something that, this certification, is it something that is going to broaden your appeal in the profession, or is this just going to be another impractical certification? I'll work really hard, earn the certification, it won't mean anything. Well, I'm here to show you that I think it's extremely invaluable. And I noticed you'll see this little photograph here of a roller coaster. This is called Kunda Ka, which is at Six Flags Great Adventure in Jackson, New Jersey. And what's so important about this photograph to me is that it represents an agile approach, in the fact that, a typical roller coaster for 100+ years, roller coasters relied on the chain link, or the chain climb, the chain lift rather, to get them up to the top of the hill to build the energies that were required to complete the course of a roller coaster. Well, a Swiss company by the name of Intamin, they wanted to challenge that approach because they felt like a lot of cost and waste are diverted to that chain lift. It costs millions of dollars just to get a group of 24 people on top of a hill, and you've consumed quite a bit of resources by doing that, and time and energy being the main thing. If you've got a roller coaster you are marketing as a 2.5 minute ride, well, a half a minute is spent just getting to the top of the chain lift, which doesn't really provide much of a thrill other than the thrill of nervousness and anticipation. So they completely turned that whole concept around, but they needed a different approach because this had never been done before. So they decided to try out what's called linear induction, which is basically electric magnets to pull the vehicle out of the station. Anyway, their goal was to launch this coaster train 400 plus feet in the air and then dive back down. Well, they needed to do that, and they didn't want to use a chain. Naturally, a chain lift is not going to accomplish their goal here, so they needed another radical approach to that. So this is where Agile came in, and Agile is all about having project management tools and strategies when you're going into a project or trying to develop something that has never been developed or done before. And I'll give you some pointers through this webinar about, maybe when's the best time to use an Agile approach versus the traditional project management approach. All right, so but getting back to the certification planner course here, it is a course, and we are prepping you for certification, but it's more than that, I think, because you are going to be exposed to all types of techniques and tools that maybe you would never be exposed to. And, on the prescriptive side, there's so many tools and techniques that PMBOK, again, I hate to use acronyms, but that's the project management body of knowledge, which is, the Bible of project management, according to the Project Management Institute, the PMI. They're the ones that created this certification, which is a controversy in itself. And also they certify project management professionals through their PMP certification certificate. Anyway, so these are the objectives that we will tackle during this course. I'm not going to read them to you, but this class is not designed to spoon feed you with a bunch of information that you are to memorize. But it's not that kind of course, because this is not that type of certification. This is built on a lot of ideas. Most of the tests, 90% of the exam, is going to come from what's called the 12 principles of Agile. Think of the principles of Agile, and I'll show them to you in a couple of slides here. But the principle of Agile is sort of like the 10 commandments of the Bible. These are just good principles to live by in an Agile environment. And that's what your exam is going to consist of knowing those 12 principles, so not just memorizing them. I mean, memorizing them is going to be the easy part because you could just use index cards, but also being able to apply them. And I'll show you a slide about what's called doing Agile and being Agile. And I use that term with a little humor, because doing Agile, I've actually been in with companies and I have been given the reputation as being the Agilist. And people will come to me, people being IT professionals usually, or people that work in IT, or maybe someone that works on up the executive chain, and said, show us how to do Agile. Well, Agile is not really, it's not like a calisthenic or an exercise. I can show you how to do it. It is, you really want to become Agile. And that is, you take on those 12 principles, and anytime there's an issue or a project or a challenge, we're going to refer back to those 12 principles. And we'll apply those 12 principles to that that product challenge or that project. Okay. And I always challenge students or participants rather. You know, I used to teach 7th grade math, so forgive me for that. The Freudian slip there, but our traditional methods solving your project complexities. Well, all of these companies or all these applications, you know, I guarantee you they are not prescribing to a one-size-fits-all approach to project management. For example, Apple. Let me see. I don't see the Apple icon on here, but Apple, when they developed the smartphone, they had no idea what that smartphone was going to look like, what it was going to feel like, what it was going to smell like, what it was going to taste like. They had no idea. So if you follow the traditional processes of project management, you know, of initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, closing, you know, it's hard to plan for something that you don't know. So you need a different approach to that. And that's where Agile really comes in. Looking at these icons, the Google interface, now Google hasn't changed much in 10, 12 years. I think they've got a really user-friendly platform. Now, change is inevitable. And every once in a while, they throw a few teasers out there where they might mix something up for a special holiday or event or time in history or something like that. But anyway, they'll add some characters and that they'll mix it just to make it a little humorous, like putting a bow on their product. Just like when a hospital or a government building might put a Christmas tree up every year at Christmas on top of the building. I see that in the town of Alpharetta where I drive through toward Atlanta sometimes. Every Christmas I anticipate to look up on the hospital to see the Christmas tree up there. Anyway, the point is that it engages and change is inevitable. If you're not changing, I guarantee you your competition is. I always refer back to you know, Kodak. Kodak was the predominant camera manufacturer throughout the 60s, 70s, and most of the 80s. In the 90s, they developed something called the Advantix product. And Advantix was basically 35 millimeter film, the same technology, but now they were enhancing the paper that pictures were going to be printed on. So, and some of their cameras were Advantix ready, some of them were not. So you had to buy the Advantix film. But the point is, this technology didn't come out till the mid-90s. Well, what was happening in the mid-90s? A little tiny Japanese company by the name of Olympus were developing digital cameras, and you would go to Kmart or Walmart or Sam's or wherever the typical mega giant retail shopping centers were, and you would start seeing these Olympus cameras next to these Kodak cameras that were still selling 35 millimeter film. Olympus has a digital film. You know, there's no, you can print the pictures yourself, or you can just upload them to a lab. And it was the processing was much more affordable as opposed to 35 millimeter film. So Kodak was much late in the game. They put all their eggs in the 35 millimeter basket, even up to the mid 90s. And I think that my thought is that they thought that the technology was going to be around forever. I think they kind of got fat and complacent on their reputation, and they were a little late to the game. Now they're still in business, but they are no longer, you know, a fierce competitor in the camera market these days. All right, Agile. What I really encourage students and participants to wrap their mind around is that Agile is really a change in your attitude about project management. And I say that because if you look at these pictures of these two houses, this is the same house. If I look at it initially, you know, I'm seeing this mid-century house that is in need of maybe some cosmetic repairs and a facelift. But then if I change my attitude and I watch those shows on HDTV where they take these old homes or these old structures and they turn them into something that's more modern, and yet it still holds this aesthetic appeal as being, dated a little bit in the period of which it was built or developed. So anyway, but it's a total change of attitude. Now this course is not to overwhelm you with more processes, more memorization, more tools, more inputs and outputs. It's not like that at all. In fact, I think this course is it's very enjoyable because it really makes you, as I mentioned earlier, makes you have a serious look back at the way you have been approaching projects. It gives you a radical idea to look at project management. That is going to be, I'll be honest with you, it's going to be a little threatening to some of your traditional project managers, just because they can't imagine the art of project management where they do not have any control, if you will. I mean, you're still ultimately responsible for the project, but you rely heavily on your project team in an agile environment because, I always say processes don't create good products. People create good products, and that's why we want to empower your project team. And in this course, I will show you how to do that. Now, as I mentioned earlier, PMBOK, the project management body of knowledge, is just very prescriptive. Now, last time I counted, they had 47 processes that the PMI required that you memorize. That's like 47 different machines. They have inputs, which can sometimes be 6 or 7 inputs that go into this machine. Then you choose which tools and technique you're going to use, and out should come something of value. That's a lot of memorization. PMP is still considered the crown of project management. Well, it's only considered the crown of project management, in my opinion, is because companies are hesitant about learning something new. But 70% of all software projects back in the year 2000, right after the Y2K event, 70% of software projects were failing to meet time and budget constraints. Why? Because they were following the old school prescriptive PMBOK. And that's how Agile was actually born, is because you had the Steve Jobs, the Bill Gates of the world. They all met in Aspen, Colorado to talk about these failures. And then they decided, what, PMI is not interested in changing their approach to project management, so we're going to come up with our own. So they locked themselves in a ski lodge. Nobody could leave for the weekend, and they came up with the Agile Principles and the Agile Manifesto. And here we are talking about it, 18 years later. And the biggest, in my opinion, as a project manager, the biggest difference between a process-based approach to project management, which is what PMBOK is, versus the Agile approach, is the fact that Agile actually harnesses change. In other words, we invite it because we want our organization or our customer to have a competitive advantage. Because I guarantee you, as I said earlier, if we're not changing, our competition is. Look what happened to Kodak. But on the other side of that, the PMI and PMBOK, they do everything in the power of those processes to resist change. So if you're involved in a project and you need to make a change, it is incredibly painful to make that change. It has to go to a change request, change control board, configuration management. And it's very costly too. And you'll hear me, I mention a lot of anecdotes whenever I'm teaching a course. I remember there was a roller coaster in Texas back in the 80s, and the roller coaster had double loops, and the coaster train would not, it didn't make the complete circuit of those two loops. And so their first thought was, okay, we'll reduce the diameter of those loops, will make it a little bit smaller, so maybe it will go through. Well, they tried it that way, and that was incredibly expensive. Now, some engineering firm convinced them that that was the right thing to do. Still didn't work. So then someone started looking at some other coasters that had accomplished that circuit with two loops, and what they found was their coaster train, the one that was failing, they were using steel wheels on the coaster train. The coaster trains that were making the circuit were using polyurethane coated wheels. Now, steel creates friction, whereas this polyurethane synthetic material that was being used on the other trains was frictionless. So they had to change the wheels on the roller coaster train, and then it successfully made those two loops. So anyway, there was I'm sure a champagne cork and everything else, and that coaster is actually still operating today. But anyway, following a prescriptive-based approach to project management, those things can be very costly. And whereas in Agile, PMI-ACP certification, you will become skilled, and you'll be able to prove that you know how to reduce cost in times where change is welcomed, because we want, as I said, we want our organization to have a marketing advantage. One size does not fit all. As I mentioned earlier when I showed the slide with all the different organizations, one size does not fit all. Here's something to think about. When it comes to project management, if you are building a house or a structure that has been built before, seldom do we see, Frank Lloyd Wright homes, where you got these beautiful homes that had never been built before over creeks and streams and that sort of thing. But typically, most homes, are following a plan that someone else has already done before. All right. If you are approaching a project where something has been done before, or if you're reading instructions, you put these pieces together, you'll achieve this result. Just like making a car, they have blueprints for all that, or building a building. You put these pieces together, you're going to achieve this result. Well, then I think the traditional project management approach is the best approach. But if you're going into a new direction that's never been gone into before, or is very novice, maybe you're creating a product that's very novice, then you need a different approach, because you need to know when to stop throwing good money at bad results. And Agile will show you how to do that. So that's why, one size does not fit all. But unfortunately, so many organizations, and I can name drop a few, but I won't, still subscribe to this prescriptive-based approach to project management. And maybe, that's perhaps why they're having trouble keeping up with technology. I have trouble keeping up with technology. If I chase technology, I'll never stop running in 2019. It just is constantly changing. Okay, this is another one of those points that will support the idea that Agile is very radical compared to prescriptive-based project management, and that is, we aim for accuracy but not precision. What does that mean? Well, it's hard to shoot a moving target. So if your target, just imagine at the carnival. Close your eyes. Imagine you're at the carnival. You got the little air gun, the little. Maybe it does use some sort of spongy dart. I don't know. But the target's moving. It's really hard to hit that target if it's constantly moving. But if you're in the ballpark of that of that target, and you get points for it, that's going to serve you better. And that's what we try to do in Agile, because it's hard to hit a moving target. And if you keep aiming for that moving target, you're going to fail. And if you fail, well, your integrity as a project manager is going to slip. And also, you're going to consume resources, and resources can be very costly. You're going to consume resources, and at the end of the day, what do you have to show for it? You don't have anything. That's why we aim for accuracy, but no, we don't aim for precision. And our goal is as agilists, is to try to reduce what's called technical debt. And technical debt, I don't know if you ever heard of that term, but technical debt is basically assuming that the technology is going to be there, or assuming we're going to be able to do something when we really don't have a plan on how we're going to be there. Here's an example. Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla. They started selling tickets on a round trip voyage to Mars. But first of all, there's so much technical debt with this event. We don't know if the vehicle is going to be sustainable. Is it going to be safe? And besides, once you get there, what are you going to do? The human body Earth is a perfect match for the human body, because we have the ability for sun, darkness, rain. We need water, grow foods, eat. All that's available here on Earth. Is that going to be available on Mars? Well, who knows? So he's banking. In fact, their tickets are already being sold for this voyage, which sounds too risky to me. But I definitely hope he is not subscribing to a traditional project management approach in there. All right, and we strive to battle complexity with simplicity. Now, this right here it's so simple that your really high-skilled project managers, they scoff at the idea, because their world is so complex they can't imagine being simple. I think it would just fall apart. Well, simplicity, the art of maximizing the work not done, is one of the 12 principles. And we like to keep things simple. And I'm going to show you, if you take this course, the PMI-ACP Certificate Planning course, I will show you how to keep things simple. And again, it's all about changing your attitude. The analogy that I like to use in this case is when I was growing up in the 1980s, we had the VCR, the video cassette recorder. Well, the VCR, in the beginning, it could do 5 or 6 basic functions. It could play, stop, fast forward, rewind, record, maybe program if you're lucky. If you're like my parents, you bought the model that had the least amount of capability because it was the cheapest. But still, it served us for 20 years. Anyway, but as the VCR went through the 1980s and even in the 1990s, it had more features. Suddenly, 2 heads were now optional, whereas you could buy what's called a 4-head VCR, which had a more precise playback video resolution whenever you play back a VHS tape. The VHS tapes didn't change that much. There's a few changes, but not really. The same video cassette you bought in 1979 was basically the same video cassette you bought in 1989. But the VCR did change. So they added bells and whistles to the VCR. Now it had all types of different functionalities. But what they found was that, okay, we keep growing and elaborating on this same product, but people weren't using all those features. I have a Samsung phone, and it has so many features and different apps and functionality. I don't use 85% of those things. So we like to keep things, we want to keep it simple, because the more time spent on functionality and the more bells and whistles you add to a product, that's more that you're going to have to support later. So, and then suddenly your any gains you've made as releasing the product are going to be eaten up by supporting the product. Now, this is not a boot camp course. I just want to make that clear. I am not a boot camp instructor, and I'll tell you why. I think that the focus of boot camp is to prepare the brave for a test or an exam or some sort of trial. By cramming a lot of information in such a short period of time, and then boom, we pack our bags and we're out of there. Hotels are notorious for hosting these boot camps, regardless of whatever discipline you're in. It could be selling makeup or selling nail polish. It could be teaching a PMP certification class. Yeah, you'll earn the hours necessary to qualify to take the exam, but at the end, you're scratching your head thinking, what in the world have I learned? Yes, I know how to memorize things, but what have I learned? And as someone who has also taught PMP preparation course for a few different organizations, I often get called back later and for tutoring services, requesting tutoring services, and then I'll always ask the participant or the student, I said, what did you think of the boot camp you took? Not with me, because I don't teach boot camps, but I said, yeah, it was pretty good. And then I always ask, well, if it was such a great course, why are you here? So I don't have a lot of faith in boot camps. This is not a boot camp course. This is, yes, I'm going to prep you on how to pass this exam. Definitely, that's my goal. But also, I want to add more tools to your toolbox because, a few slides ago, I showed you one size does not fit all. And the best project managers today are those project managers that can listen to the BA, the business analyst, or the product owner, or the organization, and can gather what needs do they have that will bring the best business value. And if all I got to do is put some pieces together, or if this is something we've done in the past, then traditional prescriptive PMBOK project management is the way to go. Very waterfall like. But if this is something that they've never tried before, or maybe it's never been done before by anyone, then I need take an agile approach. So I need to increase my value, and I want you to increase your value as well by having more tricks up your sleeve per se. And here are those 12 principles. I don't mean to a spoiler alert for the course, but this is what the course is based on, or the exam is based on. And also, let me mention something here, and that is, if you are taking or preparing for the PMP exam, that test is based solely on the project management body of knowledge book, which is 300 or 400 pages of project management best practice, basically, and it changes every 4 or 5 years. It's more and more and more. But these agile principles have held strong, just like the 10 Commandments in the Bible, still hanging in courthouses today, hundreds of years later. These 12 principles are still stand strong since they evolved in 2001. So now it's been 18 years, still standing strong, haven't changed, and no one is trying to change them. They don't meet annually to try to figure out which ones can we eliminate and can we add any new ones. Nope, these have stood the test of time. As I said, this is more than just a certification course. I really want you to digest this and be as passionate about Agile as I am, and invest it, meaning you've taken it, you know it now, learn how to apply it. Now, I do realize if for those of you that come from large organizations and you have, been practicing a certain methodology or a certain approach like waterfall for your whole career, and you're not really sure if this Agile thing is going to be able to take off right away, well, you can introduce components of it, and I'll give you some pointers about when and when not to do that. But hybrid project management is trending right now. What's a hybrid project manager? That's someone that has the capability to look at both sides, the left and the right, and to find the best approach to that organization's project. And this is what I had alluded to earlier about doing Agile and being Agile. I love this photograph, by the way. This actually was a daredevil type Rufus from the family, and I forget what their last name was. Some of you may know that grew up in the 60s and the 70s. Anyway, he tightrope walked over to Lula Gorge, Georgia, and people still, it's become a tourist attraction these days. You still can stop and at this little bitty, it's like an outpost almost. They sell souvenirs and jams and jellies, but you can overlook where this gentleman who is now passed of natural causes. No, he didn't fall. But anyway, he has since passed, and they've made a little, almost like a tourist attraction museum based on his famous walk. But anyway, doing Agile would be something like engaging in Scrum. Okay, we're going to do Agile. We're just going to engage in Scrum, but it's not having the Agile frame of mind. You're following the rules and procedures of Scrum, but you're not really following the Agile principles. Although Scrum does subscribe to some of the Agile principles, but anyway. But being Agile would be someone that can find like an unforeseen value in some feature. If you've got, you're developing something that's never been developed before, and then you know, looking at the 12 principles, what is it? Can we find anything related to this feature? Well, it may be finding some new value, because our focus when it comes to Agile project management, yeah, we want to reduce costs, reduce time. We want things to actually be done when we deliver. But really our main focus, for me anyway, is to bring value to the organization, because organizations are in business for one reason and one reason only, and that is to make money. Just follow the money, as I always say, whether it be in business or politics, follow the money. And so as an Agile project manager assigned to a particular project, you know, my main focus is to find value for that organization and whatever it is I'm doing, all the way down from the way people spend their time actually developing to the product itself. And that's being Agile, not just doing Agile. Tools you can use, not lose. And this is great because I like this because it emphasizes, just let me start with the photograph. The photograph uses a basic common hand jack, and a lot of vehicles come with these, used to come with them in the boot of the car. My spouse bought a Kia, what is that thing called? It's Kia Soul. Didn't even have a jack in the car, because they are so confident that this vehicle is never going to break down. And based on the warranty that she got with that car, you know, they're going to change your oil, so I don't need a jack for that. Now, I kind of grew up old school. We've kind of learned to fix our own cars and that sort of thing, but times have changed. It's now convenience is the key. That gives you the competitive edge. Automation is key. But anyway, with Agile, because remember I mentioned being simple, simplicity, the art of maximizing the work we don't do. These tools are so simple that you could teach a third grader how to use some of these tools, some of them. Whereas you think about the traditional side, if you're really highly skilled and you know are familiar with earned value management, you know how tedious and how quote unquote complicated those formulas can be. And besides, most organizations, you can put that on a resume, but most of them don't have no idea what earned value management means, or they wouldn't know what to do if you applied those formulas and gave them some stats. They might pick up on it, but the majority of organizations don't know, especially in governments. They certainly don't know. Local ones anyway, federal ones might. And I stole this line, we deliver methods, not miracles, from, there is a company that makes some sort of skin cream, and I used to see their commercials, advertisements on Game Show Network or something. It said, we deliver methods, not miracles. And it would be a miracle to hit the target every single time. But remember, we're aiming for accuracy. Just like a doctor. A doctor or a surgeon, they're aiming for accuracy. Sometimes they might aim for the target, but accuracy is the key. You go to your general practitioner, and they take your temperature. You give them some information about your symptoms, and they're going to make a few suggestive prescriptions. Well, they don't exactly know what you have. You maybe fit the you check all the boxes for a certain illness, but pinpointing exactly without maybe running a lot of expensive tests, they're aiming for accuracy, but not necessarily exact precision. However, they might get lucky. So in this example here, what you're looking at, this is robotic cardiac surgery. The surgeon is not actually doing the cutting and the incision and the placement of any synthetic device, but in this model here, the surgeon is actually driving the robot, if you will, almost like an arcade game. I know because I've experienced this before, and so they're trying to aim for precision, in the standard deviation area of tolerance, if you will, and that's what we try to do as well. Now, what I do want to mention something here, and I'm putting on my sales jacket, and that is this course is really, really good, and I'll tell you why. It's really good because of the value. We're value driven. In fact, that's one of the constraints of the Agile triangle is value. Whereas I think a lot of education companies out there, they want to say a boot camp, or they promise you better technology, better resources. Well, for the money, I think that this is a really, really good course. You're going to be taught by a certified professional, and to earn that certification, that professional has to have so many years of experience. So it's not like they graduate with a 4-year degree and then they went and took another test and earned their certification. No, if you've ever completed an application for the PMI to earn any of their certifications, you know how painful the certification process can be. And also, let me mention here, I've taught this 3 or 4 or 5 times for CPL, and I'm always amazed that even though odds are we're going to be distant unless I'm called to meet you somewhere in a business center. But it's your session, it's your time, and you own it. So, you have the autonomy to ask questions, and you can use the chat features, you can use the mic feature, whatever. Just because I've got material to get through, I'll be glad to answer. I love talking about Agile and my experiences with Agile and traditional, and comparing the two, contrasting the two. So I think for the value, compare this price to others out there, and especially some of the colleges and universities. I took a PMP prep class back in maybe 2008 from an instructor who had never even taken the exam, which is that's a violation of the Code of Professional Responsibility. It's against the Code of Ethics, but yet the college where I took this course was violating that code because they were trying to make a financial gain. And I come to find out the instructor had not even earned certification. Now, luckily for me, it didn't make my earned hours null and void. I was able to go ahead and apply those because I had applied them in the application process, and of course I did go on to pass that exam. But anyway, So this is where you will you can visit to register for a course. The good thing about the online courses, they're almost on demand. And they'll throw some dates out there, but it's not like it's 6 months. You got to sign up 6 months in advance. No. And as I mentioned, they offer 200 plus courses, and this is one of their fastest growing courses, which I would love to take this myself, Lean Six Sigma. And Lean is a methodology that we will actually cover in the PMI-ACP preparation course. Anyway, thank you for joining me today, and I do hope you'll consider taking this course. And I think you'll really enjoy it. Everybody that takes this course that I've ever met with or instructed, that they always give it high marks. And you can go and read the reviews yourself. Don't take my word for it. Just go and read them for yourself. And I'll be glad to answer any questions about the application process as well as the exam itself. And I'll give you some pointers about how to take the exam. We'll talk about the professional code of responsibility. And I have got just suitcases of anecdotes and analogies to share. It kind of puts all this in perspective for you. We don't do a lot of memorization here either, which is the beauty, I think, of this exam. But those 12 principles and the Agile Manifesto, which is just 4 statements. And that's the key for passing this exam and to become Agile, which I think you obviously are interested in more than earning the certification. I do hope you'll sign up with us, and you can always request Jeremy Kennedy if you're interested in taking this course with myself. Thank you.